This next guest, he is been part of the Best Answers for Cancer organization for quite some time, which I am now head of since our founder, another Annie Brandt, passed away, unfortunately, after successfully, I should say, fighting this awful disease for 19 years. And with that, after her passing, right before she passed on the board, they nominated me president of that organization. I'm not a doctor, but it was a very humble and honorable gift, and so I'm proud to lead that as well. Dr. Nathan Goodyear resides in Arizona. He and his wife have come out the last 2 years, so thank you for that. He will also be on the Best Answer for Cancers panel later on this week, so please enjoy him. And for our live streamers, can you hear me? Are we good on live stream? I know my mom is there, so good morning, Mom. I love you. And Dr. Nathan Goodyear.
So they said to use this mic because it's got the best audio, so I'm going to try to do this without literally breaking a leg. So let's see if I can do that. So I'm Dr. Nathan Goodyear, as you mentioned. I like to know my audience as I talk. So how many doctors do I have here? Just raise your hand. Okay. I'll engage with you with eye contact, etc. How many patients do I have here? Okay, good. Now, for the doctors, the practitioners, and the providers, how many healers do I have here? Okay, it's my people. Okay, how many teachers do I have here? Okay. Now, the reason why that's important is you'll find me, I'm a geek about words, I'm a geek about history, so I found my German brother from a different mother, clearly with Dr. Sapwood. I talk about reductionism, but pre-medicine taking on reductionism. But the concept here is that the word physician in Hebrew is the word raphe, literally means healer. And the word doctor in Latin, of course, they're exchangeable. The word doctor in Latin is docere, which means teacher. And so what we need to understand is that as practitioners, physicians, providers, we're teachers that heal. That's what we are. Now, for the patient perspective, patients that achieve remission, every one of you, I call you one-star generals, because you now have the opportunity to lead more people in hope. But there's a gentleman here by the name of Charlie Kroger. I had the pleasure of taking care of him as a patient, and when you take care of patients, they become your family. And he wasn't just one type of cancer, not a second, not a third, not a fourth, but 5 different types of cancer. And I call him a 5-star general. Charlie, you want to raise your hand? So he's got a website. He didn't know I was going to do this, so it's called 5 Miracles, F-I-V-E, miracles.com. The reason why this is important is because when patients achieve remission, they go, what now? What is my role? Well, other than continued healing, it's to give people hope. So we're giving people hope, so thank you. All right, so cancer innovations. We don't have to wait for tomorrow for hope. It's actually available today. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Wait, what? I'm sorry. There we go. So this is a book. We'll have some later. And understand everything that I'm going to be saying here, it's going to be on social media, it's in podcasting, it's in all those realms. So you'll find all of this content there in a variety of ways. There we go. So, are we winning the war on cancer? Another show of hands. Are we winning the war on cancer? Okay, yes, some no. Okay. Anybody know we were going to war on cancer? Nixon declared war on it in 1971, and we've been at war ever since. We're at a crisis in healthcare. Now, what's interesting about that word crisis is it means a decisive point in the progress of a disease. That goes back to 15th century. But in actuality, it is the moment of crisis that we're in healthcare, in medicine. in oncology, which is the point at which change must occur, whether good or bad. And I believe good is on its way. My speaking coach, Deborah Boblet, shout out Deborah, she wrote a book called Bold Mission. She always says, Nathan, give your objectives right up front. I said, okay. Crisis, precision cancer care, innovate, elevate, empower, establish, and advocate. So we have barriers to progress today to all of those. We have profit-driven systems that stifles innovation. Group thinking suppresses critical thinking. Critical thinking is not allowed. Stagnation leads to potentially diminished patient outcomes. I put together some different graphs here, and you'll find this at the end of the reference, but in this crisis, you probably heard the word insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Since 1980, this data goes back to 1950, we've actually had a revolving door of medical bureaucrats going to corporations and back and forth. And over the same course, we've had increased additives to food, increased toxins to our environment, increased toxins in our food, and of course in us. And we at the same time had the 1980s of the food recommendations, 1992, which is not that long ago, the food pyramid. And what we've had since is a correlated increase in obesity, increase in cardiovascular disease, increase autoimmune disease, and increase in cancer. Now, that doesn't prove causation, but it's a very interesting association. We've had a reduction in quality of life since 1990. And healthcare costs from $40 billion in 1950 to $4 trillion. In fact, US 17.6 billion, 17.6% of GDP, number one in the world, spent on healthcare in the United States. So we're not doing things right. And now we have a crisis of trust, where a 50-state review survey published in online JAMA actually showing that as current, patients don't trust their doctors, or at least they do only 40% of the time. Hospitals, 40% of the time. And we're not carrying good friends there. Government, politics, pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies. So we're jumping in with bad bedfellows there. What we have and what we've developed is a crisis of regulation bought or brought by bureaucracy. Could be bought too. Complexity brought by that same regulation and by that same bureaucracy. So what we need is solutions. Solutions to transform not just our cancer treatment, but how we approach all disease. Okay, I'll have to wing this by memory. And that word transformation, what it means is it means to change our disposition, our character, our nature. So innovate, we need innovation in ideas, purpose, and practice. We need elevation of thought and therapies for practitioners and providers. We need empowerment of patients and practitioners. We need advocacy for doctors to remind themselves who they advocate for, and advocacy for patients. And so these are the things that we need to transform our healthcare, particularly cancer care for patients. Now you may go, well, where do I find you? You find me on these three hot links, pre-scribe.com, OffScriptRx, and I work with Williams Cancer Institute. That's where most of what I'm talking about today originates. And the reason why this is there is because I want you to understand, if you find me on any other website, it may have my picture, it may have my name, it may say you can contact me. Not me. So just making you aware of that, and also verified social media accounts. So to enable this progress, we must empower the mind, okay? And the way we empower the mind is we actually understand that we need to change the way we think. We need to restore our focus and our purpose to our patients. We have to understand that longevity, which has been our focus the last 100+ years, has brought us where we are today. Which, sure, there's been some victories in cancer care. You've seen that. But what we need is more. We need better. Until every cancer patient is sitting where they don't have to worry about one, let alone five, Charlie, we're not done. We're not done. And so we have to understand that legacy is a better approach. Legacy, it's a transgenerational impact on patient care. It emphasizes quality, hope, and holistic approaches. It prioritizes innovation that transforms future outcomes. Again, I like words. Integrationum, it's Latin for integrative. It means to renew, restore, make whole. Yet, since Nixon declared war on cancer in 1971, it's one of the longest wars that has existed in history, and it has laid waste to a lot of bodies. So we need to change our focus. Had this made many, many, many years ago, Julie, I thought it was great when you talked about bridge. That word disease literally means lack of wellness. Integrative medicine is the means to bridge disease to wellness. More, it's the means to bridge natural and holistic medicine with conventional medicine. I jokingly say, if you walk outside and break a hip, I'm not going to tell you to take more vitamin D. You need to surgically repair that. We need to understand where conventional medicine has a purpose and has a role. But we also need to understand the power of integrative medicine to make it better, to make it safer. But it's also the means to connect the patient to the doctor. And I think it's the key to innovation to build trust and hope for the future. And it's built on genomics. A lot of geeky words there: genomics, epigenomics, transcriptomics, hormonomics, some words you can't even say, glycomics, exposomics, senolytic, and I like to say the budging field of whatever omics. But this is the foundation on which this future of cancer care is built on. Let's see if this works. Nope. Okay. So what I was going to do is, these were different social media reels, and you'll find these online, Instagram, where I talk about these individual topics. And another thing is, if the content's not regular, it's not me. So let's look beyond cancer, because we have to understand that at least per current estimates, 5 to 8% of cancers are genetic, and it's probably less than that. It's influenced by outside, environmental toxicants. It's influenced by inside, metabolomics, toxins our own body produces. And these all mix together. So when you look at cancer, there's no one answer to cancer. There's no one cause. There's no one treatment for prevention. It's all the above. We have to recognize the complexity, and it's through that recognition of complexity we can go, now let's move forward. Genes, they're not our destiny. We have the ability to change away from what's been the dominant somatic mutation theory of cancer. One hit. I think this originates with Paul Ehrlich at about 1907. He was an immunologist, and he came up with what he called the silver bullet, became known as the magic bullet theory, which was one treatment for one disease. It's the first chemotherapy, chemical therapy. Had nothing to do with cancer. It was salvaricane for the treatment of syphilis. But we now have the ability to move beyond that past and actually create a new destiny. Yes, it may involve genes, but it's going to involve a lot more. And so the solution to this crisis and the pathway to precision cancer care, it's innovation, ideas, purpose, and practice. That's how we move forward. We have to rethink the causes of cancer. This is a free download on my website, pre-scribe.com. That's a QR code. And it's just helping to challenge the way we think. We all need challenges. I have a good friend, Sabine Hassan, probably one of the most premier fecal transplant doctors, gastroenterologists in the world. And she said, prove me wrong. Meaning, engage with me. Help me learn more, and I'll help you learn more. And so this is just challenging the way we've approached cancer causation and thus cancer healing. Friend and colleague, Thomas Seyfried, cancer is a metabolic disease. He has been ridiculed, ostracized, throttled on social media because merely presenting the idea that something is beyond a genetic component. but he has stayed strong. If you've ever had a chance to meet Thomas Sifri, which had a video right here, let's see if this will work. Oh, he's a pistol. I sat down with him and his research team for about 5 hours in his lab. And every minute was scintillating. I mean, he's a pistol. And when it comes to metabolic disease, it's amazing the wealth of knowledge that he has that can be applied to what we do. And I also had the pleasure of sitting in with him with some of his doctoral students and break down research articles. Now, that was fun. But it's people like that that are going to help us to innovate in a wide variety of ways. And the innovation includes patients as well. So tumor is systemic. Actually, let's go back a little bit. Systemic to tumor. This has been the old idea. Systemic therapy, getting through the body to the tumor or the tumors. The problem is we get a lot of collateral damage, off-target toxicity as it's called. It's built out of this old purpose about going to war, fighting. And we know what war brings. What we need are new ideas. Here it's the tumor to systemic approach. It's targeting a tumor with localized treatment that then leads to global immune benefits and regeneration and healing. There are new ideas that are going to bring forth new purpose, I think a restoration of purpose for doctors, but also new therapies that we don't just have to say, get through treatment. Now let's hope you survive, recover, now start to live. No. Let's regenerate and heal as we do treatment right now. This is a word you hear me talk a lot about on social media, podcasting, blogs, etc. It's called the abscopal effect. Its origin is out of 1953, Dr. R.H. Mollitz with radiation research. And the words, two words there, ab and scopus. Ab means away from, and scopus means target. So what we're doing here with the intratumoral or tumor to systemic approach is we're activating the immune system locally to the tumor. And we'll show you how. And what that then does is it harnesses the power of your defense, of your immune system. That's your body's defense. Its purpose is to defend you against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Yet when we look at chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, and yes, they have their purpose. They do great harm to the immune system. In fact, when you look at some of the bench research on chemotherapy, there's questions, do these T cells, these T lymphocytes, do they ever recover? They may not. And that then sets the potential stage for recurrence and metastasis in light of anything outside the last 5 to 6 years. That's just on its own something different. And yes, we are dealing with something new called cancer that is post-pandemic. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's different. So what we're doing is we're harnessing your defenses, not hurting it, but actually empowering it. Here was a 2024 article published, Pulse Electric Field Ablation versus Radiofrequency Ablation in a Mouse Model, Breast Cancer. And they were able to show by just doing this intratumoral ablation, and they showed here that the pulse electric field therapy was better than the radiofrequency ablation. It downregulated vascular endothelial growth factor, hypoxia-inducible factor 1 alpha, c-MET, a proto-oncogene, interleukin-2, a immunosuppressive cytokine, proliferative index Ki67, reducing it, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and then recruiting M1 macrophages, which are anti-tumor, reducing M2, which are pro-tumor, reducing myeloid-derived suppressing cell recruitment and infiltration, and actually increasing natural killer cell and dendritic cells. Immunogens here, and they obviously provide dendritic cells as well, but we can actually stimulate it. And it actually increases T effector cells and reduces T regulating cells, creating a balance that allows the immune system to pivot to anti-tumor. And then when used in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitors, here anti-PD-1, it actually provided a abscopal effect, allowing the treatment of distant, untreated tumors. It prolongs survival. That's what this is all about, right, Charlie? It's about enjoying your wife and enjoying your kids. Survival. That's okay. I had gained a little weight there, so that's okay. We bypass that. So here's where I discovered I had a brother in Germany I didn't know about. We actually kept an exchange student from Germany. Deutsch, he would always correct me. He said, no, it's Deutschland. I said, no. But so I have great respect for the work that they do in Germany, especially from the integrative cancer perspective. And what we're dealing with here is something that actually was birthed prior to what he was talking about earlier, which is there was a gentleman by the name of Christian Smuts. What a great name. He was a philosopher. Some people called him a man of academics. He was a businessman. Sadly, he was also a politician. And he was very frustrated with how they evaluated systems at the time. And he said, what we need is something that doesn't reduce things down to compartments. That's called reductionism. We need to understand that they are connected to the whole, because when we reduce them to compartments, they're often not connected. And it was somebody that's called the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So we have to understand that, yes, sometimes these systems are complex and we must compartmentalize them to understand them. But we must recognize how these compartments communicate, work together for the benefit of the whole. So these next generation integrative solutions, I believe, are going to be targets that don't just work to destroy the tumor. We've had enough war. It's time to have some peace accords with the body and the immune system. It's time to actually target the tumor, empower the immune system, and then work to build a strategy that lets the body heal. And I believe the future of cancer care is very different than what I'm actually even presenting right now. Allow the body to heal as you target the tumor. So that's the next generation solution, but it involves integrative medicine. I believe that's the focus point of what integrative oncology brings. Gut microbiome. A lot of talk about it, a lot of chatter, super excited about it, but what is the gut microbiome? Well, the gut microbiome is a collection of bacteria metabolites, don't forget about that, viruses, fungi, protozoa, helminths, parasites, archaea, and things we don't even know yet. So that's the gut microbiome. But what this is going to bring is the ability to provide innovation in practice. Because most people will talk about the gut-brain axis in cancer, and rightly so. But the gut-immune axis in cancer, now that's exciting. And I would tell you that the immune system begins in the gut. When you say things on social media, sometimes you learn very quickly. So I actually talked about a study that was published where women that did not, they had to deliver their child via C-section, and then they were not able to breastfeed their baby, that the risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes in their offspring was much higher, and thus cancer was much higher. And you would have thought I had told every mother in the world she was a bad mother. I was like, uh-oh, what I said is not what they heard. So communication's two ways. So I had to do a amendment to it. We need to understand the power of that gut microbiome to impact the immune system, not just for therapy, which we'll talk about in a second, but actually for the future of individuals. So the National Cancer Institute, we have an opportunity for change. When you look at its website, hopefully this will change very soon, it talks about prevention in cancer care. You know what it has listed? Wear more sunscreen. Don't smoke. Yeah, I agree with that. And get your cancer screening. Okay, well first, cancer screening is early detection. That's not prevention. But I can agree with that. So what we need is a change of thought. You can see, so it doesn't just apply to doctors, it also applies to patients. And it applies to those that empower us to be able to provide it. So what we have is this gut immune axis that really is not even that big. We're just beginning to understand the impact of this from treatment, but also prevention. And we have to understand the microbiome, it modulates the immune system. So looking at the gut microbiome and immunotherapy, again, all references will be listed at the end, and I'll show you that. The microbial diversity correlates with better responses to immune checkpoint therapies. These are your anti-PD-1, anti-PD-L1s, anti-CTLA4s. Key bacteria such as Akkermansia municiphala and a bit of bifidobacterium promote anti-cancer immune responses. So in the future, we may actually be looking more at not what kind of cancer you have, but what kind of bacteria are in your gut. Okay, have the order there. Okay, missed a few slides here. So then the gut microbiome and immunotherapy, we have to understand that when we look at this, everybody wants to focus on diet, and that is correct. Thomas Seyfried, my good friend Aisha Winters, diet gives us the ability to change the environment that sets the stage for the immune system to be anti-tumor or pro-tumor. Though epigenetics plays a big role in cancer, that doesn't mean all things are bad. That means things are good because we can modify that genetic expression. We can modify transcriptomics. We can modify microbiomics, hormononomics. We can modify all of that. And when we look at then where I believe we are now, at least we are at the Williams Cancer Institute, is fecal transplant. Dr. Sabine is on again. She has a clinic in Santa Barbara, and I think she's one of the world experts on it. Had a great clip of her. You'll check it out on social media because she's a pistol. She had a couple people post some fake accounts on Instagram and X, and she just goes off. She's that kind of person. She's great though. Fecal transplant, what it allows us to do is it allows us to boost the immune system, to augment natural killer cells, to augment T lymphocyte, to augment dendritic cell recruitment, to augment the innate immunity, to extend the humoral immunity. This is the adaptive immunity. And it gives us that ability to do it from day one. Really nice article published just last year on renal cell carcinoma, which they give fecal transplant to these patients. And they also combined it with immune checkpoint inhibiting therapy and what's called a tyrosine kinase inhibiting therapy. And what they found was astonishing. Number one is the progression-free survival in the patients that got the fecal transplant. It was at 66.7%. And those that didn't get the fecal transplant, it's at 35%. That's a 31.7% increase in 1 year progression-free survival by a fecal transplant one time. The overall survival increased from 28% in the non-treatment group, that is with the fecal transplant, to 52%. So that right there alone shows, now that's just one cancer type. We have to understand the limitations there in that evidence. But there's other animal studies and there's other human studies there, clinical trials, that this is the future, the gut microbiome. But it's not just something to go, wow, what is that? Is it stool? No, it's an immunotherapy. Anything that modifies the immune system, it's not a drug, that is an immunotherapy. Mistletoe, immunotherapy. Fasting, immunotherapy. Sleep, immunotherapy. Anything that modifies the immune system, whether good or bad, that's immunotherapy. Well, let's answer that afterwards because that's where a lot of the work needs to come from. If you have golden poop, as Dr. Sapin Hassan called it, you can actually get, I think she wouldn't tell me how much, but quite the paycheck. So don't know what golden poop is, but that's what she calls it. So the fecal microbiome transplant gives us that ability to step in with immunotherapy. It improves outcome in traumatic brain injury. This doesn't just apply to cancer. Think about, dare I say, autism, CTE. I was a college football player. I know I don't look like it, but I would be dead if I maintained the weight that I was at. So all the guys that played football, traumatic brain injury, or MBAs. But it improves melanoma treatment. It improves outcomes in chemotherapy. And I'll talk something about that in a second that'll blow your mind. It restores depleted microbiota populations more effectively than probiotics. It does. And when we're dealing with cancer, we have to understand that though I think probiotics can be helpful to really set a change that we need at the moment, at the time, it needs to be via fecal transplantation. And we also need to think in fecal transplantation in the idea of true transplantation, organ transplantation. Think in the concepts of engraftment, graft failure, graft rejection. These are the same processes we would think about a lung transplant, a heart transplant. And this was the, okay, that one there. There was a slide in there that actually had Dr. Sabine Hassan in there, because she actually is the only person I know that has published a study showing fecal transplant actually engrafting into the gut microbiome of the patient. So it's not a one-time treatment, it changes the gut microbiome. Now, is there a lot we don't know there? Oh yeah, there's a lot there we don't even know exists yet. But I can tell you, having done this now for about a year, a little bit longer, and working with those that have done it longer, and working with companies that have fecal transplant in the US that has a different indication via the FDA, and they see the benefit, and the downside seems to be very, very small. Definitely a lot needs to be determined there. But it improves outcome there. It restores that microbiome, and it helps us to actually change the environment, one that sustains itself. The gut microbiome diversity is linked to better immunotherapy outcomes. So it's not just about what bacteria is there or not there. It's the diversity. Again, key bacteria like Akkermansia municipala and the Bifidobacterium phyla. These improve immunotherapy responses. Again, not just a drug, anything that modifies the immune system. Modifies the gut microbiome metabolites. Small chain fatty acids. Most people probably are aware of butyrate, sodium butyrate. It's a great gut microbiome metabolite. It influences and changes genetic expression. It's epigenetics. It influences and changes the immune response. Whenever I mention fecal transplant to patients, I wish I could see a pop-up cartoon bubble above their head. Because I think everybody has this picture in their mind, because I just see them kind of either grin or just have a just horrified look on their face. And so I thought, well, I'll try to find an image that could maybe be properly picture that. I couldn't. This is about as frank and crude as I can get. You know, I think people think that there's a tube from one rectum to the other, and it's a poop-to-poop transfer. Oh, I kid you not. It's not. It's not. It's obviously a very standardized process, and it's a very easy process. Very easy process. We also have to understand that learning never ends. So though we may go, wow, the gut microbiome, that's awesome. But what about the tumor microbiome? See, we now even know that the brain has a microbiome, once thought to be a sterile environment. So there's microbiome to microbiome communication. That is, these microbiomes influence each other. They communicate with each other. There's actually some animal research that suggests that a fecal transplant can actually seed pancreatic cancer. Think about that. And that the microbiome, these microbiomes, they change what's called the tumor microenvironment. They change the immune system within the tumor microenvironment, which can affect the ability to pivot and favor an anti-tumor versus pro-tumor environment. And it also affects treatment resistance, chemotherapy. And of course, outcomes, because that's what this is all about. So this tumor microbiome crosstalk doesn't just affect the immune system, it also impacts angiogenesis. That's the blood vessel supply growth that cancer so desperately needs. The question earlier about oxygen, well, we need oxygen to get that cytotoxic effect of vitamin C when we give it pro-oxidatively. So oxygen there can be very beneficial to induce those cytotoxic pathways when you're using certain therapies. But here we have to understand that crosstalk, it's not just bacteria to bacteria, so they're having some private conversation. It's actually changing the way the rest of the body functions, the way the immune system communicates, the way the immune system sees or does not see the cancer. And then also the way some of these very specific, what are called targeted hallmarks of cancer, these will affect that ability for that angiogenesis or neoangiogenesis to be sustained. So let's get into some practice here. Let me pose you a question. We always want to focus about what's the right therapy, the right drug, the right natural therapy, the right holistic therapy, the right integrative therapy, because we need them all. What if the problem that maybe we've had is the wrong approach, the wrong delivery? Doesn't mean that this is the only way to treat. Well, what if going through the body? Because, we deal with IV vitamin C, toxicity issues. We see that with curcumin IV. Anything given systemically can have off-target toxicity. That doesn't just apply to drugs. But what if we go right to the tumor and we destroy part of it? Intratumoral ablation. There is my favorite, what's called pulse electric field therapy. This is not PEMF. This is PEF. This is intratumoral. You see it? Oh my goodness. Okay. So I am winging it, baby. Okay. So this is nanopulses of high voltage energy. Okay. So we actually put needle into the tumor under real-time CT guidance in most cases, but also ultrasound. And then we place an ablative probe, the pulse electric field probe, through that and destroy part of the tumor. Not all of it. Because when you do that, as the radiation research shows, you actually reduce the immune response. You make that abscopal effect unreliable, non-predictable. But by enabling the immune system to see these new antigens, by destroying part of the cancer, you can actually really dictate the immune response to a degree. This has wide variety of impacts from just treatment. Of course, you have the newer techniques with histotrypsy, but when you actually look at the research as it relates to PEF versus radiofrequency ablation, which is older, histotrypsy and heat and others, safest, highest benefit, lowest side effects. Many different cancer types that this has been shown to benefit in. That was in Scottsdale. It was actually Christmas. I forgot when things grow and are green, that it affects my allergies, because living in Arizona, everything's dead. Cryoablation. Now, when people think of ablative therapy, this is what they think of. And this is something that you see a lot in the U.S. And we do intratumoral cryoablation. However, when you do a cryoablation of the whole tumor, and you'll see this often with breast cancer, you get these what are called big cryo balls. The breast just becomes a dominant hard mass for many, many months and sometimes years. And there's been some research that suggests that causes local receding recurrence on the periphery of that cryo ball. Now, why would that be? Well, cancer, a tumor, has been called a wound that does not heal. And so if we create a wound with a wound, we create the opportunity for cancer cells that are released a part of treatment. They can recede locally. They don't just spread, they can recede locally. And so cryoablation here done to target the tumor is done the same way. We actually have a phase 2 study here in the US with metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer, where we've actually been able to get an 80% response rate in these men, 1 year progression, 1 year, 42% no evidence of disease. We're doing cryoablation and intratumoral immunotherapy, all done into the tumor. This is a rapid freezing and thawing cycle here, and it destroys the cancer cells, triggers apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, and it destroys those blood vessels, angiogenesis, as well. Many different cancer types this has been shown to be beneficial in. I'm sorry? Oh, local receding. We have to understand when you treat a cancer, whether that's systemically or intratumorally, one of the downsides that we worry about is the release of circulating tumor cells. It's important to understand these aren't individual cells. They're a conglomerate of cells. You'll see them referred to as platelet cancer cell aggregates. But they harness the environment that they're in and they transfer that. So when these circulate in their blood, these protect you against shear force. The platelets, for example, protect the tumors that are, or the tumor cells that are circulating against the shear force of the blood, which can destroy it itself. But it also, research has shown, protects it against natural killer cells. So these aren't just isolated cells circulating about. They're taking their friends and allies with them because they're out there to succeed. But it's not just to go to a distant site and form metastasis. They can circulate and then return just right back home, just like Fido might. May take his way around the body or her around the body and then right back there locally because it's looking for a toiled soil. It's looking for wounds. It's looking for areas that it's very easy for it to attach and grow. We must combine intratumoral ablation with intratumoral immunotherapy. And I think this is where Dr. R.H. Moll in 1953 understood the abscopal effect, but they were only doing radiation. So they were just doing the ablation, but with ablation at that time with radiation was destroy it all. We have a process here in America that I don't think the rest of the world has. More is great and a whole lot more is best. And sometimes that's not right. And so when you see that with the ablation, but when you combine it with intratumoral immunotherapy, what I tell patients is, 10 minutes and I've missed all those slides? That's the magic sauce. It's bringing these together. So here's a great 2024 article, and it's missing the last. Okay, so cytokines, monoclonal antibodies, natural therapies. Yes. Things like mistletoe, CBD, integrative therapies. Yes. Vitamin C, ivermectin, immune cell-based therapy, nucleic acid sequences, pattern recognition receptor agonists, viral, non-viral, oncolytic immunotherapies. They are all agents that are injected into the tumor. Great review article. But the power comes when we combine them together, because what we get is the ability to overcome these basic pharmacological principles that limit systemic therapy. We deliver it right to the tumor. We don't want to worry about the tumor microenvironment. We just go there. We don't have to worry about penetration. We penetrate it. We don't have to worry about distribution through the tumor. We saturate it. We don't have to worry about distribution throughout the rest of the body because the immune system recognizes it. We help it process it, and we modulate the tumor microenvironment to allow the immune system to infiltrate and activate against the cancer locally to spread. Distantly, that's the abscopal effect. And it's a time and spatial thing. It means it's localized, it's immediate, but at the same time, it transfers to a sustained systemic approach. It's time and spatial. Again, learning never ends. Immunotherapy circadian profile. Anybody ever heard of this? Really nice retro. Oh, somebody did? Who is that? Not surprised. So cutting edge right there. There was a retrospective study looking at 18 different, there was a study published looking at 18 different retrospective studies showing that the time of treatment, so we're not just talking about what treatment's applied, where it's applied, the time. Simply giving it in the morning improved overall survival. It reduced side effects. That's chemotherapy. Giving immune checkpoint inhibiting therapy in the afternoon reduced survival. Giving immune checkpoint inhibiting therapy in the morning improved survival. So now this is limited, it's retrospective. We have to again understand where the research is and the limitations, but that's exciting. So we can actually improve benefits of therapy, whether it's systemic or in the tumor, just by the time of day. So you thought doctors just like to get up early. No, maybe what we've been doing is helping our patients, we just didn't know it. Really exciting research there, really exciting. We need to elevate thought and therapies for patients and providers. See, we have to help patients understand that they can heal. Doctors, you can have the freedom to heal. Repurposed drugs in oncology. I don't think anybody in here has not heard of this. Super exciting on this. It's the old way, new way. And I'm dropping digital courses, and this is going to be my first. Hopefully it'll be on there, if not very soon thereafter today. Beyond the prescription, reimagining old solutions for new challenges, harnessing the way we know to treat what we fear. Prescribed off ScriptRx, that's where you find it. And again, anywhere else, other courses, even though it may have my image on it, my name, it's not me. But we have to understand that repurposed medications don't just apply to drugs. They apply to melatonin. They apply to therapies like vitamin C. It's an antioxidant when you give it orally, but if you repurpose it IV, it can become a pro-oxidative therapy. Hyperthermia, what is that? Well, that's a repurposed fever. It's in a controlled setting. So these don't just apply to drugs, but the reason why I dropped this course is I was really alarmed when I started doing social media and I picked just a topic. There was an article that came out talking about hydroxychloroquine. It's like, oh, I'll do a social media reel on that with Instagram. And below that in the captions was, make your own hydroxychloroquine at home. Here's your dose. And I was like, what did I walk into? So what I saw was that the doctors weren't engaging their patients. I love patients. The patients that come to us, they're some of the smartest I know. They'll go, oh yeah, natural killer cells. I know all about that. CD56 plus dark light. Yeah, I get all that stuff. I'm like, holy cow, you know more than I do. But we have to understand that in that group chat, in those captions, the patients were left to their own because doctors had turned their back on them. When you're diagnosed with cancer, you lose your humanity. You're engulfed with fear. Hope becomes the last thing in your mind. And you want to control anything that you can control. And repurposed medications give us that ability to provide some control and some improvement in therapy. This is a website that was then spawned because of that. I wanted to be able to provide doctors to patients that I have no connection with. This is just a labor of love. 5 minutes, oh boy. That they can go to and learn information and then access doctors, practitioners that can then provide it for them if they don't have one locally. Because I get comments from people all the time. I'm in Australia. I can't get any of this. What do I do? I'm in Spain. I can't, I have recent son of a patient works in the Middle East and not a patient of mine. They're like, we're just trying to find anything to help him. Where do I go? Like, well, the closest I could find is Zurich. Just limited options out there, unfortunately. We have to empower patients and providers. We have to understand that when we talk about precision cancer care, it's the right treatment for the right patient at the right time, and it may not be one therapy. It may be a multitude of therapies simultaneously, and probably more than just two. These are just a little bit of what some can look like. And by stacking these therapies, it's not additive. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's actually synergistic. That's 1 + 1 is 100. It's exponential. That could include chemotherapy plus intratumoral ablation and intratumoral immunotherapy, whether that's full dose, low dose, whatever dose. It's about bringing things together to create synergy, to allow the body to do itself. And yes, we do need to kill those cancer cells sometime. We need to elevate the thought in therapies for patients and providers. We've got to help patients think beyond this concept of going to war and help them to understand that you can live as you heal. That's the whole idea. Live. Why wait? Begin now. And we have to help doctors to understand and remember their purpose. It's to treat and serve patients and to help them heal. Yeah, we have to use toxic drugs sometimes, but what if we add integrative therapies and it reduces the toxicity? Well, that's a win-win. Hopefully one day we won't need those toxic chemicals, but that's where innovation comes from. Now, that's my introduction, as my pastor always says. She just had a heart attack. What if aging is optional? A lot of people go, what did you just ask? I thought we were talking about cancer. I am. There's something called Yamanaki factors. Research started in 2010s, latest publications 2023. Gentleman at Harvard University, Dr. David Sinclair, we do some work with him. We do these for our patients as well. Talking about aging is maybe something that is optional. Now, think beyond your age. I'm 54. What about here if we're talking about cells? We're talking about your immune cells. What if we could regenerate and reset those immune cells to a point which is pre-disease, pre-dysfunction? These mice, the one on the right there, he's old. The one on the left was old. He's now young. So using these OCT4, KLF4, SOX2 transcription factors, Dr. David Sinclair and others there at Harvard were able to reverse the aging of these mice. Again, here, it's the micro that I'm concerned about. He called it a unifying theory of aging and cancer. So here was, this article was just published in December of 2024. Called it cancer cell reversion. Now, we have to understand the limitations of this. This was a systemic analysis of digital twin cancer cell gene networks. So we're not looking at in vivo, we're not looking at humans, but what they were able to show is reversion of the cancer cells, transforming colon cancers into normal cells and transforming 3 different cell types to complete normal transcriptomics, which means the out expression of the genomics to the epigenomics to the transcriptomics was all normal in these 3 cell lines. And he went so far to say the fact that cancer cells converted back to normal cells is an astonishing phenomenon. That's probably the understatement of the century. This study proves that such reversion can be, not might be, not possible, can be systemically induced. It's called the meta-analysis. This was a 2023 article, the meta-hallmarks of cancer and aging. Notice those arrows dotted or solid going back and forth. Aging is something that is a part of cancer. Cancer is a part of aging. When we look at cancer, we said, well, it's a disease of the aging. Right. We're not talking about numbers of decades. We're talking about the ages of your cells. And chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, they make those aged cells older. And a double negative here doesn't make a positive. So where we can understand and learn from these intertwined, interconnected meta-hallmarks of cancer and aging, that's where the future lies. Just a few exciting examples. Everybody loves vitamin C. I love vitamin C. It's the first time I got up on stage talking about vitamin C, intratumoral. It's where I met Paul Merrick, one of my dear friends, smartest guy I know, I think. Loves people more than anything. He's got a great heart, yet he's got hurt so bad because he's just trying to help patients during the pandemic. But intratumoral vitamin C, they gave 100 micrograms up to 1,000 micrograms. The higher the dose, the more the regression and inhibition of tumor growth and tumor size. 100 micrograms was the lowest, 200 micrograms statistically significant reduction in tumor growth by injecting into the tumor, mouse model, 2016. So we don't have to wait. There's exciting things happening right now. And yes, we do inject intratumoral vitamin C. I am sorry to put profanity on the website. I mean, on this presentation, you know, we talk about profane words like the 4-letter words we all think of, but per the pandemic, ivermectin is a profane word. What about intratumoral ivermectin? Oh yeah, 3 milligrams per kilogram intratumorally reduced tumor size in mouse model by 50%. Take that up to 10 milligrams per kilogram in the tumor, guess what? Near complete regression of these tumors. Recent article talked about how ivermectin orally can turn cold tumors hot. It means non-immune responsive tumors, immune responsive. So we got to establish a legacy of patients and focused medicine. We got to restore precision medicine. Multiomics drives individualization. I'm going to run through this real fast. Integration of therapies creates synergistic and transformative care. The right therapy for the right patient at the right time. Integrative therapies offer safer, more precise options to combat cancer, combining localized, systemic, and metabolic approaches addressing cancer's complexity. Continued innovation and research are essential for improving outcomes and preserving quality of life. It's hope and healing, focusing on patient-centered precision oncology, empowering patients with knowledge and evidence-based integrative care. This is the exciting point that we are in America today. Innovation is the cornerstone of better outcomes. And again, until all patients are not prevented from cancer or all patients are not healed from cancer, we have work to do. So Breaking the Cancer Code, that book, we innovate, elevate, empowering patients with innovation and precision to create healing and a legacy. Not just a legacy for their children, their grandchildren, but a legacy for themselves. One that promotes healing. And finally, advocate. Restore the patient-doctor relationship. Notice patient first. Doctors, we've got some problems. We've got advocacy confusion. Are we advocates for government? Are we advocates for corporation, medical bureaucracy, hospital, clinics? Or are we advocates for our patients? And whether intentional or not, there's confusion that doctors have about who they're advocates for. And we must return that advocacy to the patient. And for the patient, it's all about you. As I tell patients, you're the star quarterback. I'm just the general manager, the coach. My job is to put you in the best position, as I'm about to fall off the stage, to put you in the best position to basically lead the team to victory. That's your body. So you need to understand this is about you, and you need to understand that the more you advocate for yourself with a doctor in your corner, the more you're going to help to return this system back to yourself. So again, it comes back to this bridge. And integrative medicine is a bridge between the lack of wellness, which is what disease means, to wellness, between natural, holistic, and conventional care, between doctor and patient. And it's innovation that will build truth and hope. And I'll end with this. You know what that word hope means? It means confidence in tomorrow. That's it. Guess what our job is? To build out what that tomorrow looks like. That's our job. So this is where you can find me in pre-scribe.com, OffScriptRx, Williams Cancer Institute. That's where we do all this magic work. Here are the domains related to the social media accounts. You can find me on the different accounts. Otherwise, that's not me. And here are the references. This is going to researchrabbit.com. When you click on that QR code, scroll to your left, you'll see the studies listed there, or sign up because these studies will update, because I update these all the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Goodyear. Does anybody have a question for Dr. Goodyear? We have time for a couple of questions here from the audience. Oh, do you want to come up to the microphone? That was great.
Thank you.
I noticed that you and Annie Appleseed both prescribe to hope in healing, which is important.
Hope is where it comes from, and healing,
hope.
that's what it means to be a physician. We can't hide from it.
No. Thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation. I am curious about injecting ivermectin. I know that's a bad word. I'm sure we've all heard about that.
Yeah, I'm sure they just bleeped it.
No. How do you go about doing it? Who does it? And
Yes.
how much research is done on it?
Sadly, and I think this is changing. This is why I'm so excited. And there's some of us in this audience that are helping to make this change. Change is good. I was raised in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force, and I was a brat. So, we moved every 2 to 3 years. So change is good to me, and it's easy to come by. Most of this innovation occurs outside the U.S. right now. And so we do these procedures at hospitals in Cabo San Lucas and Mexico City. And if you go to williamscancerinstitute.com, you'll see that there. And so we have studies ongoing. All the studies done in Mexico where we work with the Mexican FDA, it's down in Mexico City at a hospital there. Not a surprise. Most people want to choose the Sea of Cortez in Cabo San Lucas than Mexico City. Sorry, Carlos. He's a great guy, one of our interventional radiologists. Where in Mexico City, lanes are a mere suggestion. But that's where we do those. But I think the opportunity is now where we can change that. We do have, like I said, a phase 2 clinical trial in the U.S. where we're doing intratumoral cryoablation and intratumoral immunotherapy with 4 drugs. But we need more of this. We need innovation to be encouraged. And I think one of the ways to do that is by actually decentralizing this process. Yes, we need the CDC. Yes, we need the FDA. But decentralize, give this back power of the patient and the power to the state. Put it back in the hands of doctors, patients, and local hospitals. Let them serve their communities. And I think that's where and how we accelerate that research to be done here in the U.S. so patients don't have to go to Mexico. But right now, we have to do that just because of some of the limitations and the regulations associated with it. How do we inject it? We just inject it. And it's just literally we inject it. And we do that in Mexico.
Thank you. We have one more quick question, and then We want to stay on time. How are you?
Hi, I'm currently going through chemo, but anyway, but the IV, and I get IVC. And I read some conflicting information recently about IVC. I don't know if you have looking for like the best place to get accurate information on how IVC might help or not. But this article was talking about certain genetic mutations, the high-dose IVC may not work as well. So I don't know if there's like, how do you figure out when is good for you, when it's not, and where can I get the best accurate information on that?
Well, I think
And also, before you begin, Petra comes to our conference pretty much every year, and she probably could benefit from having a conversation with you afterwards as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, absolutely. I think we've been lulled into the last 4 to 5 years. So I'm going to kind of get on my soapbox a little bit if I already haven't. And I think more doctors need to speak out, and that's kind of why we're in the predicament we're in. Our job is to be advocates for you. It's to lead the system for you. And if we don't, then that leaves you to do it on your own. And there's plenty of smart patients, trust me. They're all in here. But our responsibility is to lead you and to help you get that right information. So what we've been told over the last several years is that the science is settled. The consensus of experts, though if there's a couple people in here that I would advocate are more experts than myself. Sean Devlin's one of them. Have you ever been called, hey, you're going to be an expert? I've never been called to be an expert. It's like, who declares people to be experts? The consensus of science. Science is never consensus. It's never settled. That's science. And so when we talk about vitamin C, we have to understand that what's the mode of delivery? What's the outcome you want to achieve? What's your body size? What's your tumor burden? What coexisting therapies exist? What's your inflammatory system look like? What's your immune system look like? All of this plays a role in proper dosing. If you want a cytotoxic effect, that's going to have to start somewhere around 1.1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram. That's what the current limitations of the research tells us. Now, it could be lower, depending on the individual. We may just want to epigenetically modify. We may just want to support the immune system. We may just want to support recovery from chemotherapy. Yeah, a lower dose would be acceptable there. Lower dose would be acceptable. There was a recent article published out of Iowa, was in the fall of last year, 2024, where they actually gave, these patients had pancreatic cancer, and they were giving them Gemzar and Abraxane, which is a secondary chemotherapy regimen behind Fulvox or FOLFIRINOX. And what they found is that the addition of IV vitamin C, 75 grams, 3 times a week, doubled overall survival. From 8.2 months, I think it was, in the non-treatment group, that's just the Gemzar and Abraxane, to 16 months in the treatment. Now, they even followed the plasma ascorbic acid level in those patients, and they were therapeutic. And so at 75 grams, some patients can achieve therapeutic, some cannot. A lot of it depends on size. Like Dr. Sapi said, most of the patients I see, they're not big individuals. They're thin, so lower dose probably applies. But the more tumor burden there, whatever your indication and treatment approach that you want out of it, I think it's going to dictate the dose. So I think there is a point where high dose 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram is indicated. I think there's a point where maybe 50 grams is indicated, maybe less, probably not. But I think when you look at the research in terms of the in vitro and vivo, what we know, and this is where this research was so exciting, is that the cancer cells hold on to the vitamin C a lot longer than the healthy cells do. In fact, it's about 48 hours compared to the non-cancer cells, about 16. So when you think about, well, why 3 times a week? That's where that comes from. Yes, is there limitations on understanding of that? Yes. But also when you look at Linus Pauling in his research, 1976 and 1978, when they dropped below twice a week, that's where the benefit in those terminal cancer patients was lost. So 2 times a week, that's where they saw some of the benefit. And then, of course, the Mayo studies, where they tried to replicate that, and they only gave it oral, that dominated the consciousness of public for decades. And now we're just starting to see the ability to overcome that. But thankful to many people that kept the fight, lack of the war, just that war terminology, applies here, to keep pushing to understand vitamin C has a purpose, it has a role. There's no one answer to cancer. There's no one answer to the treatment of cancer. There's no one answer to the causation of cancer. There's no one answer to the prevention. It's through that precision cancer care that we can focus on prevention. That is our best tool. And that's where we need to make a pivot. As we make advancements in cancer care, which is super exciting, there's a lot of people in here doing amazing things, we need to prevent more cancers. That needs to be our role.
Thank you, doctor.